Wreath-laying ceremonies and processions across Europe on the 105th anniversary of the first Armistice Day, commemorating all those who died in World War I.
Saudi Arabia hosts an emergency Arab-Islamic summit aimed at ending the war in Gaza before it sparks further conflict in the region.
Sombre scenes in Paris as rows of French troops marked the 105th anniversary of Armistice Day. President Emmanuel Macron visited the Arc de Triomphe on Saturday, where he honoured the Eternal Flame, commemorating all those who died in World War I, the war that was supposed to end all wars. This as Ukrainian troops are facing their second winter fighting against Russia's full-scale invasion, while in the Mideast, Israel's incessant bombing campaign in Gaza is entering its sixth week. Across the British Channel, there was similar pomp and flair in London. According to the National Archives, more than 1 million British military personnel died during the First and Second World Wars. At 11 a.m, a 2-minute silence was accompanied by a wreath-laying ceremony at the cenotaph. These military marches are coinciding with what is expected to be the largest pro-Palestinian rally in the capital since the Israel-Hamas war began. Demonstrators are calling for an immediate ceasefire.
Israel has launched new attacks on targets in Lebanon and Syria. Hezbollah said 7 of its fighters were killed in Lebanon. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, claimed it hit a Syria-based organization it said was behind a drone attack on a school in Eilat on Thursday. An IDF spokesman said it was operating in any area that threatened Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited IDF forces, including an artillery base, and also met injured soldiers at a medical centre in Ashkelon, telling them their friends were hitting Hamas hard. Hamas says the death toll, mainly Palestinian civilians, has surpassed 11,000 in Gaza. In the Saudi capital Riyadh, Syria's president arrived ahead of an emergency summit of the Arab League. It has called for a complete ceasefire in Gaza.
Saudi Arabia is hosting an Arab-Islamic summit aimed at unifying efforts to end the war between Israel and Hamas militants before the conflict draws in other countries. The Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation were initially scheduled to hold their meetings separately, but the Saudi Foreign Ministry announced early on Saturday that the two summits would be held jointly. The meeting comes 5 weeks into the conflict that's already claimed the lives of more than 12,000 people, most of them civilians. Aid groups have joined pleas for a ceasefire, warning of a humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza. But Israel and its main backer, the United States, continue to rebuff their demands.
Between the artillery rounds on the Russian MOD pictures, camera shutters are clearly audible. Moscow's version, a Ukrainian stronghold in Zaporizhia being destroyed. Explosions far away in Ukraine's capital today were, according to its air defences, drones being downed.
Now, in our time, the world is at the crossroads. Local wars can provoke a global collapse. The suffering in which a particular nation is thrown can drag neighboring nations into the abyss.
As President Zelensky, speaking in English, reminds the rest of the world it cannot afford to ignore Ukraine's existential fight, its own pictures show its soldiers training for one of the many fronts. AFP's independent pictures show bitter fighting on one of those fronts near Kherson.
At least 31 people have been injured in an explosion at an asylum seeker reception centre in the central Italian town of San Lorenzo Nuovo. The blast came just before midnight on Friday, destroying the building where dozens of people, most of them men, were housed in mini apartments. One person was seriously injured and was taken to hospital in Rome by helicopter. The fire brigade said in a statement that the explosion was probably the result of a gas leak. An investigation is underway.